entry, microorganism. What is the preferred portal of entry? What do they prefer? Each microorganism prefers a specific portal of entry. And in order for the microorganism to continue to survive, it has to exit the host and infect another person. So every microorganism has a portal of entry and a portal of exit. Okay? Majority of the time, the portal of entry will be through the respiratory passage or the intestinal passage or the urinary passage or reproductive passage. Exit will also be the same through the respiratory passage or gastrointestinal passage or the genitourinary passage. Okay? So coughing, sneezing through saliva, of feces, or genitourinary could be urine, vaginal secretions, semen. That could be the portal of exit. Okay? So let's see what are the portals of entry. The most commonest portal of entry is the mucous membrane. Now you all should know what is a mucous membrane. Mucous membrane is the inner lining of passages. Okay? Mucous membrane is the inner lining of your passages, air passages, intestinal passage, urinary passage, reproductive passage. The inside lining of the tube is what is called the mucous membrane. Okay? It's basically epithelial tissue, okay, which lines the inside. So the mucous membrane is one of the commonest portals of entry. It could be the mucous membrane of the respiratory passage, it could be the mucous membrane of the intestinal passage or the genitourinary passage. Okay? So not all microorganisms can enter. There are specific. Some of them only cause disease when they enter through the respiratory passage. Okay? For example, influenza, tuberculosis. All of these can only enter through the respiratory passage. Gastrointestinal passage. Microorganisms that can only cause disease if they get in through contaminated food or water. Cholera, for example. Now, cholera, even if the bacteria enters through the respiratory passage, it cannot cause any disease. It has to come in through the intestinal passage, through contaminated water. Only then it's going to cause disease. Okay? So they have a preferred portal of entry. Typhoid. Typhoid is something that you get only through contaminated food. Okay? So you cannot get typhoid through breathing it in. Okay? Yes?
Lysozymes aren't going to kill the bacteria?
What's that?
Lysozymes?
Lysozymes will, but the amount of lysozyme, again, remember that equation that I told you, number of microbes. So if it is just a few, then your lysozyme that is found in secretions will manage to get rid of it. But if the number of that you are exposed to is high, then the amount of lysozyme and the chemicals that you have in your body, it surpasses that. Okay, so it's not going to be able to help. So gastrointestinal passage always through contaminated water, food. Okay, those are the diseases. Respiratory passage, anything that goes through saliva, coughing, sneezing. Genitourinary passage generally is sexual transmission. Okay, this is sexual transmission. So there has to be some sexual contact or body fluid contact in order to transmit the disease. Okay, so some of these, gonorrhea, you would have heard of it. Syphilis, you have heard of it. We have talked about genital herpes, which is a viral infection. Trichomonas vaginalis, this is a protozoan infection. So we will be learning about these. But when you look at some of these terms, amoebiasis, giardiasis, these are all protozoan diseases. Protozoan diseases. So when you see some of these terms, try to just quickly look it up, and if you don't know what it is, try to look it up and see what the disease is. Second is skin. Now skin is rare because as long as the skin is intact, things cannot enter. Okay? The moment there's a cut or a wound, that's when things can gain, microbes can gain entry. Having said that, there are some microorganisms that can gain entry through the small holes that are there on your skin, microscopic pores, the hair follicles, the little pores that are there, they can get in through the openings of the sweat glands or the openings of the hair follicles. Okay? So they can cause disease. So acne is something like that. When you get a eye infection, you can get a stye where the hair follicle, base of the hair follicle gets infected. Those are microorganisms entering through those tiny openings on the skin. But otherwise, intact skin is a barrier. Okay? That is actually a barrier for the entry of microorganisms. There are some worms that can burrow through the skin. Okay? They can burrow through the skin. There are not too many, but okay. Do you know what is conjunctiva? Pink eye is a disease that is called conjunctivitis. Okay, what is conjunctiva? What is that? It's a very thin membrane that covers the white of your eye, the sclera, okay, the white part of your eye. So the white part of the eye is a thick fibrous tunic, your eyeball, the outermost layer of the eyeball, which is called the sclera. And on top of this white exposed part, there is a thin epithelial membrane that covers it, that is called conjunctiva. Okay, that is called conjunctiva. When this membrane gets infected, you call it conjunctivitis, okay? Or pink eye, what you say, pink eye. So sometimes you can have microorganisms entering through the conjunctiva as well. So pink eye can be due to viral infections. It can be due to bacterial infections as well. Okay, both. It doesn't necessarily have to be bacteria. It can be viral as well.
So if I reuse like a wet towel, someone else?
As someone else, yes, you can get it. You can get it, yes. So now the less common route for entry of a pathogen is parenteral. Parenteral means directly entering the blood. That is what is parenteral. Okay, directly entering the bloodstream. This is not so common, but whenever a person undergoes surgery, the wound can get infected. Or if, if an animal bites, things can enter directly into the bloodstream. Okay, or if there is a puncture, needle stick injury, then it can directly enter the bloodstream. So the parenteral route is also used. So for example, let's say somebody is getting a blood transfusion and the blood is actually not tested properly and there is already hepatitis B virus in it. So when this person gets the blood transfusion, the contaminated blood transfusion, the virus is gaining direct entry into the blood. So that is a parenteral route. Okay, so the word parenteral means direct entry into the bloodstream. Okay, so when you have patients who are not able to consume anything by mouth, they are in their final stages, let's say they are they have cancer that is not curable, then in order to keep them alive, we give them what is called parenteral nutrition, because they cannot take anything by mouth. Maybe you can't even put it through a nasal tube, then you have to give nutritive solution through the blood. So you give an intravenous injection. That is called parenteral nutrition, okay, because it's going directly into the bloodstream. So anything that goes into the bloodstream is called parenteral. You can have infections entering directly into the bloodstream. So those are the portals of entry. Now, once it gets in, adherence. Adherence, of course, is the microorganism needs to have certain things by which it can attach itself to the tissue before it enters the tissue. Okay, so for this point, it needs to attach itself. So there has to be something on the microorganism and something on the tissue to which the microorganism can attach itself. So microbes, as you know, do have capsules which can help them to attach, or they have fimbriae, small hair-like projections which allow them to attach to the host cell. Okay, so these are collectively called adhesins. Okay, the common name is adhesins. Adhesins are molecules on the microorganism that allow it to attach to the host cell or the host tissue. So adhesin could be on the capsule, or it could be on the fimbriae, which help it to attach. Okay, so here you can see, this is a cartoon, it's not a true microscopic picture. You can see the pathogen, you can see these adhesin molecules, and they attach to specific receptors on our cells. Okay, so specific receptors on the cells. So if you look at let's say we take the bacteria that causes cholera. Okay, the bacterium is called Vibrio cholerae. Now, Vibrio cholerae will only be able to attach itself to the receptors that are found in the intestine, the small intestine. It cannot attach itself to cells that are there in your respiratory passage. It cannot, okay, because the adhesins will fit into receptors that are found in the intestinal cells. Okay, so that's why it is very specific. Okay, they cannot just enter through any route and cause disease. So this is another, this is an electron microscopy picture, scanning electron microscopy picture, where you see E. coli attaching itself to the urinary bladder, causing infection. So they attach themselves to specific tissues. So they have, E. coli is gram-negative, so it has the porin proteins, it has so many other proteins. The outer lipopolysaccharide wall has sugars and lipids. So that will attach itself to certain receptors on the bladder cells. Now, once they attach themselves, now they have to invade, they have to enter into the cell. And it is at this point that they have to also avoid getting destroyed by the immune system of the host, our immune system, which is constantly keeping a watch. So many of the pathogens do have structures that will help them to a certain extent. They will be able to evade the immune system. They'll be able to fool the immune system and still be able to infect. So first thing is the capsule. The capsule is always a protective structure. It gives an added advantage. So bacteria that have a capsule have an added advantage versus bacteria that don't have a capsule. So whenever there is a capsule, it makes it harder for your white blood cells to eat up the bacteria. So it kind of slips off, okay? So it impairs phagocytosis. So within that capsule, the glycocalyx, there are lots of specific proteins which will impair or dampen phagocytosis. It will not allow your immune system to get rid of them. So Streptococcus pneumoniae, which is a highly virulent bacteria that causes pneumonia. Haemophilus influenzae is another highly virulent bacterium that can cause pneumonia and meningitis, infection of the brain coverings. Anthrax also has a capsule. Plague, the bacteria that causes plague, Yersinia pestis, also has a capsule. Okay, so any microbe or a bacteria with a capsule definitely has an added advantage because it can evade the immune system. And when you look at streptococci, especially the one that causes strep throat, it actually has certain proteins in the cell wall. So outer capsule is one, and once from the capsule, the next layer is a cell wall. The cell wall could have proteins which are going to not allow the immune system to attack it. So Streptococcus pyogenes, which causes strep throat, has a specific protein on the cell wall which is called an M protein. Okay, and this M protein will definitely resist phagocytosis. So your white blood cells are not able to get rid of it. Neisseria gonorrhoeae, this is a bacterium that causes gonorrhea, sexually transmitted infection, has a protein which is called an OPA protein in the cell wall that helps it to strongly attach to the host cell and invade it, get into it, without the immune system destroying it. And of course, we know about Mycobacterium. It has a waxy cell wall, mycolic acid. You know how slippery wax is. So that becomes an advantage for this bacterium. So it's very difficult for the immune system to get rid of Mycobacterium. So that's why tuberculosis, once the person gets infected, it's very difficult because it evades the immune system. So your immune system is not able to attack the Mycobacterium because they kind of slip away from getting destroyed. So these are all cell wall components. What is there outside? Comes enzymes. So bacteria also produce, microorganisms produce specific enzymes which will help them to survive, which will allow them to evade the immune system and at the same time spread. Because once they get into the tissue, they multiply and they have to spread. Okay? So they have a lot of enzymes. So enzymes like collagenase, you know collagen is your connective tissue protein. So if they can break down collagen, they can spread easily. Hyaluronidase, hyaluronic acid is another substance that is found in the connective tissue. So if they can break that down, they can spread easily. So collagenase, hyaluronidase, kinase, these are all enzymes that break down proteins in the host, break down the connective tissue proteins and help the bacteria or help the microorganism to spread. Okay? Now, staphylococci, especially staphylococci, which causes a lot of skin infections, produces a specific enzyme called coagulase. Okay, coagulase. So that's one way of by which we kind of recognize staphylococci. They produce this enzyme called coagulase. What does coagulase mean? What is this enzyme going to do? It's going to coagulate proteins. Coagulation means making a protein hard. Okay, that's what it is. Coagulates a protein. So like when you, egg, the white of the egg is albumin. So when you boil it, it becomes hard because the protein is coagulated. Okay, so that's what coagulation means, making a protein hard. So staphylococci produce coagulase. So what does this help with? So let's say staphylococci gain entry into the skin through a wound, through a cut, and then they start multiplying. Okay, so the staphylococci start multiplying. And as they multiply, they produce this enzyme, and this enzyme will coagulate the proteins that are there in the tissues or the connective tissue so that it forms, this coagulated protein will form a wall around the multiplying bacteria. So this wall will not allow your immune system to come and attack the bacteria. So it's like a shield, like in early ancient days, when you had kingdoms, they used to build a fort so that when the enemy attacks, they know the enemy is coming. The fort cannot be broken down very easily and they can attack from the fort. So this is exactly like that, a wall to protect. Okay, so that's what this is. So coagulase enzyme helps. So when this happens, this is what becomes when you have a small swelling on your skin because of the infection. This is the abscess. Okay, this will be seen as a swelling on your skin. Okay, because that wall becomes the protective factor and it causes a swelling on the skin. So coagulases will coagulate some of the proteins that are found in your body, helping to sort of limit, it keeps the infection in that place and at the same time protects the bacteria that is multiplying inside. Okay. And then you have certain bacteria also produce enzymes that can actually destroy immune antibodies. So if your immune system is producing something to attack the bacterium, they produce proteases, they produce enzymes that can actually destroy the antibody. Okay. So these are some of the